Alright, so 2016's Terrifier and 2022's Terrifier 2. Yes, I'm outside. It's a little bit windy, so hopefully you guys can hear me all right. I did try to face the microphone away from where the wind was coming, but we'll see how that works out. Yeah, usually when it comes to movies, like a series of films, I try to make singular reviews for the singular movies rather than reviewing them all in one go. But as for Terrifier 1 and 2, I just kind of wanted to put them both into one review just to make it a little bit easier on me. Plus, I don't have as much to say about both films, and it'd probably be a little bit longer with both into one review, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is a very crazy series for sure. Let me actually look at some of my notes here. There was something I wanted to say. It's written and directed by Damien Leone. Hopefully that's how you say it. He wrote and directed the first and second one, and potentially third if they decide to make another one, which they definitely kept it open for. But yeah, he is the mastermind of this character. He's the one who created it. And Art the Clown is the slasher in this movie, which is actually a character that existed before the first Terrifier movie came out. Art the Clown showed up in short films by Damien Leone, but made his full debut in an anthology film called All Hallows Eve. So that's the first time Art the Clown as a character showed up, but then basically got his own movie in 2016 called Terrifier. The thing that's really interesting about both of these movies is that there are little to no visual, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like digital effects, like CGI or anything like that. Little to no CGI whatsoever. I'm pretty sure there's none at all in the first movie. Might be a little bit in the second. I'm not 100% sure, but for the most part, it's all practical effects, which is something a lot of movies, maybe not just horror movies, but a lot of movies in general these days do not do. And the 2016 film actually feels like a film that could have came out in the 90s with the film grading and whatnot. And then this one kind of a little bit similar. With the way that it's shot and the cameras that they use, it does almost feel like an older film. And with that aspect, as well as the practical effects aspect on top of that, it makes for a really interesting experience for me as a movie lover. It kind of takes you back to the classic slasher movies like, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, Halloween, all that kind of stuff. And it takes some slight inspirations from it with the music and the costume design and just some of the kills as well. The music in the movies, both movies, kind of sounds a little bit like the Halloween, not the theme, but the theme that they have when Jamie Lee Curtis is like running away from Michael or anything like that. It kind of gives me those vibes there. And then with the costume, I mean, sure, people are gonna compare it to Pennywise, and basically the clown aspect is the only aspect about him that reminds me of Pennywise. And then he's silent, like Michael Myers, I guess you could say too, or Jason Voorhees. He's a mime clown, so he doesn't talk at all, which makes his character even more creepy. Honestly, I would say this is probably the creepiest slasher there is out there, in my opinion. I haven't seen every slasher movie, I haven't seen every franchise, so out of the ones that I have seen, Art the Clown is the one I'd probably be the most scared of. I mean, you have other slashers and stuff that have these kind of supernatural powers, like Jason, or even Michael at times, Freddy Krueger. But in the first film, at least, they keep it down to a level where this literally could just be some random guy. You know, it doesn't have to be some supernatural force. However, spoiler alert for the second one, and kind of towards the end of the first one, they do bring in supernatural elements with his character. And the first one is very slight. And it plays a big role while not being like a big part of the movie, I guess. Spoiler alert, comes towards the end, the whole supernatural element of it, which you can kind of try to piece together what might have happened there. But yeah, the second one in particular does bring in a lot more supernatural elements to it that I didn't necessarily love, because I'm a big slasher movie fan, but the thing I love most is simplicity in slasher movies. That's why I love the original Halloween, why I love the original Scream. Well, honestly, most of the Scream movies stay relatively realistic, but especially Halloween, the sequel felt like a Halloween movie that, you know, it's like one of the not so good sequels. I wouldn't say Terrifier 2 is a horrible movie, but the way that it plays out, it feels like one of those Halloween sequels where they're just throwing in anything at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's a lot of different ideas, not only in the first movie, but in the second movie as well, even more so in the second movie. And the thing I think the second movie has the biggest issue with is balancing all those different ideas. There's so many different things that they're doing in this movie, so many different elements to it, and yet none of them really seem to pay off a whole lot, except for a couple, which honestly didn't even seem that interesting to me, having to do with the main character of the second film. I don't know. It's a weird movie for sure. But that first one is definitely the one I would prefer to go back and watch. It's an hour and 25 minutes. It's a really short movie. You don't really learn a whole lot about the characters. There's a point in there where one of the characters calls her sister, and you're like, oh, well, she just has a sister now. That wasn't really explained before, not really mentioned. You don't really know anything about the characters in the first one, which is kind of a problem because you don't really feel anything for the characters when they do inevitably die. But when it comes to the second one, they tried to add a lot more character to it for the characters that are in there, giving them a lot more backstory and just a lot more meat to the bone, I guess you could say. Wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty gross, thinking about just what Art the Clown would do with that meat on the bone. But they try to give a little more depth to the characters in the sequel, which I very much appreciate. However, they at times just go too much. They dwell too much on the characters and like the things that they've dealt with, and they dwell too much on certain things that they're doing with their night, I guess, like going to parties and stuff. There's elements in this sequel where they just hold on things for way too long. Like they show you, oh, her making her whole Halloween costume, which is cool. I like that. Or, oh, her going to get a drink, or, oh, her doing this and this and this. And it's just like so many of these things don't feel fucking necessary whatsoever. I don't feel like I need to watch her like do her makeup or whatever it is that she's doing for one whole minute. Because I mean, if you have one kind of long, drawn-out scene of something that doesn't really matter, that's one thing that lasts like a minute. But when you have so many of those long, drawn-out scenes that all add up to a minute, that's a lot of minutes in your movie. I'd say about a half an hour of this movie could probably be cut out just for, simplicity and just for the sake of, really not needing those scenes there. There's a lot of just redundant stuff, which even in the original Halloween movie, there's scenes that they hold on for too long that don't feel necessary, but it's fucking Halloween. It's Michael Myers. It's classic. But with this one, it's newer. They gotta do more interesting things to really keep people coming in. And I don't think that sequel really did a whole lot of that for me. If another sequel does come out, will I watch it? I don't really know if I'd be rushing back to watch it, to be honest. The first one was good. I'll give that one a 7 out of 10 while we're talking about it right now. By the way, let me talk about some of the actors here. We have Jenna Cannell as Tara Hayes, Samantha Scafidi as Victoria Hayes, David Howard Thornton, he plays Art the Clown in both movies. Very fucking creepy. Great actor. Great job there. The actors, for the most part, in the first movie, you could tell that they were the cheaper options. No offense to the actors at all, but are they the best actors? Not at all. Not even a little bit. However, in the second movie, let me grab my notes here for the second movie, we get, who is it? Lauren Lariva as Sienna in this movie. She's incredible. I want to see what she does next, because she had some moments in this movie that really freaking surprised me, especially towards the end there. But I don't know. The characters in here are good. In the second movie, for the most part, you like the characters, and then there's some that you're kind of meant to hate. But Sienna really does stand out in this movie, surprisingly, for a slasher flick where you're, for the most part, not really caring about the main characters. One of my biggest issues with the first movie is that the main character in that film, she wasn't smart. She had certain aspects of her character that were smart, that she did smart things, but at other times she does completely stupid things and goes after sounds in the dark and shit like that. And I'm just like, that's stupid as fuck. With this character here, Sienna, there's a few added elements to it, such as like her kind of having dreams about Art the Clown and kind of knowing about it prior to what goes on in the movie. But with her, she seems to make a lot more smarter decisions. And that's the thing about these slasher movies, is that, think about it, in Halloween, you have Laurie Strode. She's a badass in that movie. You love Laurie Strode. Jamie Lee Curtis is fantastic. You have to have at least one character in your slasher movie that isn't a complete fucking idiot. And in the whole first movie, I was just like, is there not a single fucking competent person in this movie at all? So that kind of pissed me off about the first one. But at the same time, I do like the first one better. For the sequel, I think I'm going to go ahead and give that maybe like a 5 out of 10. It's not as crazy as I was expecting it to be. And yeah, maybe I was going in with higher expectations than I probably should have. But I don't know. It wasn't having me like throw up over the gore or anything like that. If anything, the first one really did more for me in terms of the gore than the sequel. Because in the sequel, you get so much of it. Whereas in the first one, you get kind of little, even though it's a short movie, you get kind of little glimmers of it throughout the film. And then when something crazy happens, which if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, it just shocks you. But in this movie, you're kind of desensitized just because of the amount of gore and violence that's in it. And the thing I do want to say, the thing I was thinking about while watching the movie is that gore doesn't make a horror movie. Like crazy gore, just the most violence, it doesn't make a good horror movie. It's the story that you put into it that makes a good horror movie. And would I say either of these films have a really great story? Not so much. But are they fun? Yes, they are. They are very much fun. They are very scary, surprisingly scary for somebody who doesn't really get scared by stuff. At least that first one, because the first one, like I said, doesn't really have any supernatural elements, so it feels the most real out of the two. It feels like the most plausible thing that could happen out of these two movies, but I don't know. Overall, are these films I'm going to be rushing back to rewatch? Not really. There's a lot of other horror movies I'd rather watch, a lot of other slasher movies I'd rather watch, but I can commend both of the films for doing what they're doing in terms of a filmmaking standpoint, where they are using those practical effects. They are using, like, you know, possibly older cameras to shoot on with a different film grain on it. You know, it has a different quality to it that kind of makes it feel a little bit older, like you're watching maybe like an 80s or 90s slasher flick. For those reasons, I can really respect both movies. But just for the sake of like having gore, just for the sake of gore, it doesn't completely work, especially in the second one for me. And I hate to be kind of rambling a little bit, and I definitely am. I'm not really looking at my notes. This is mostly just from my mind. But the thing about the sequel is that it's like 2 hours and 13 minutes long. It has no fucking right to be. It drags so freaking much. I was so ready for it to be over. It has seemingly like 2 to 3 different endings because it just keeps going. And at a certain point, I was audibly in the theater with other people around me. I was just like, just freaking end the movie already. No disrespect to the director or writer or anything at all, but in a way, it kind of felt like you just didn't know when to end it. And I'm just like, just end it here. End it here. Because at that point, you're getting to the fun. The end. The last 10, 15 minutes is the fun. It's the violence. It's the craziness that you're looking forward to the entire time. It's the slasher going up against the main character of the film. You know, the protagonist and the antagonist. And that's what you're looking forward to. But when it comes to like everything else in this movie that just seems really slow and drawn out and you just don't care about really, it makes it not as fun when you get to the quote unquote fun stuff of the film. It just makes it feel like, oh, I'm ready to go home because this movie is long as hell and not a whole lot has really happened, which is why I'm confused. I guess the first like maybe 5 minutes has a couple like really gory scenes, so maybe that's why people were freaking out just in the first like 5 minutes or so. But after a while, like after you get past that opening, it takes a while to really get going again. I think the slowness of this movie would have been better if they had a little bit more of a compelling story. Like I said, they had a lot of different ideas in this movie that I don't think they balanced well. There's a lot of things in this movie that aren't explained at all. It's messy, but I think it's going to make money, that's for sure. The theater I went to wasn't super packed, but that being said, I went on a Thursday, like right after people are getting out of work, so that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I feel like a lot of people, because of the news about it alone, the things that they've heard about it, word of mouth alone is going to drive people to watch this movie if it hasn't already. I think it's going to do well enough to give the movie a third installment. Excuse me, hiccups. I think this one will do better in terms of box office. Well, I don't know if the first one came out in theaters actually, but in terms of box office for the sequel, I think it will end up being enough for another film. Like I said, not really going to be rushing back to watch the other ones when that comes out. Not really going to be rushing to watch that one when it comes out, if it comes out. But I do think this movie probably did make enough money to warrant another sequel. So we'll really have to wait and see what happens. You know, Art the Clown is a character that I think is going to be one of the biggest slashers going forward. I think he's going to make a name for himself, and we'll really have to see where it all goes. If it goes anywhere else from here, which I have to imagine it will, but who knows. So yeah, there's my review, kind of a review for the first and second movie. I was going to try to go in order and talk about the first one first and then the second one second, but I just ended up kind of talking about both at the same time. So there you go. Have you seen Terrifier 1 or Terrifier 2? What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you in the middle? I appreciate it, but I don't love it. I wouldn't say I hate it, but that second movie just really dragged for me. It was so slow and dragged out and drawn out. I was very frustrated with that one for the most part, but there were a few good scenes in there. Have you not seen these films? Are you planning on watching them? Are you much of a horror movie fan? Because if you're not, I wouldn't recommend these. But yeah, if you're planning on watching them, let me know why or why not. And yeah, really just comment in general. I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave a like on the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And I should be back tomorrow with my review for another movie, which I'm not going to say what it is now because I might change my mind on what I'm watching, but we shall see. There's a few new ones that are out now. But see you later.